From the i-HLS studios in Tel Aviv, this is Homeland Security Weekly Report.
Hello and welcome to the weekly edition of the Homeland Security Video Report. I'm Tony Christopher. The international campaign against ISIS, US and coalition airstrikes in Syria and Iraq continued during the second week of February. Dozens of airstrikes were carried out during the week. The intensive airstrikes by the Royal Jordanian Air Force in retaliation for the murder of the pilot were salient and were carried out not only in Syria, as was the case up to now, but in Iraq as well. In Syria, dozens of airstrikes in the rural area of Kobani continued, although ISIS operatives have withdrawn from the city. Airstrikes were also carried out in the areas of Al-Raqqa and Deir Azur. The airstrikes damaged logistics facilities, ISIS military units, positions, weapons, vehicles, and oil production equipment. In Iraq, airstrikes were carried out in the areas of Mosul, Kirkuk, Tal Afar, Al-Assad, Fallujah, and Al-Qaim. The airstrikes damaged ISIS military units, checkpoints, weapons, buildings, vehicles, and boats which were used by ISIS. Bad Iran deal in the offing. One commentator told i-HLS the US looks set to present its allies with a dangerous done deal on Iran's nuclear program. The expert further pointed at the joint statement by Secretary of State Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif. The two said there will be no extension of the talks between the six powers and Iran past the most recent deadline of March 24th. The expert says this means only one thing: a deal has already been reached between the US and Iran. It is reported that the incipient deal will leave Iran with most of its nuclear infrastructure intact and with a greatly reduced sanctions regime in return for Iran's collaboration in confronting Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Innovative face recognition technology. In this day and age of highly advanced crimes on the one hand and intensifying terrorism on the other, the greatest challenge nowadays is not obtaining the data, but rather how to analyze it and understand it faster and more efficiently. So-called unstructured data continues to constitute the most significant technological challenge. When unstructured data is received or gathered, such as video clips or stills, for instance of a busy street in the middle of the day, for instance taken by the security or safe city cameras, this calls for data analysts and decipherers. Systems featuring the ability to identify passers-by and comparing them to wanted lists are highly sought after. An Israeli company developed a face recognition technology based on mathematical algorithms which translate the face data into comparable vectors or templates. In fact, the system learns from one session to another, constantly improving performance and results when it comes to identifying targets and distinguishing between them. Will the US use B52 bombers in the war against ISIS? Earlier in February, one B-52H Ghost Rider made its first flight in nearly 7 years after its initial retirement. The 3-hour flight took the plane and its 3-man crew from Davis-Monthan to its new home, Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana. The reanimated B-52 bomber is slated to resume active service next year. The Boeing B-52 is a long-range, subsonic, jet-powered strategic bomber. It has been operated by the United States Air Force since the 1950s. The bomber is capable of carrying up to 70,000 pounds, that's 32,000 kilograms, of weapons. Israeli experts told i-HLS that the vintage bomber can be very efficient in the framework of the coalition operations against ISIS. It carries a huge load of weapons and can attack multiple targets in one mission. DHS to rely on big data to protect critical infrastructure. DHS officials responsible for protecting federal civilian networks and critical industries from cyber attacks said they are going to rely more on big data analytics to predict, detect, and respond to future hacks. This, according to a recently released White House progress report. The report details how cybersecurity officials are working across government and the private sector to identify and leverage the opportunities big data analytics presents to strengthen cybersecurity. According to NextGov, DHS will gather data from its proactive scanning of critical networks to perform mathematical trend analysis of cyber events. The final product will be a full-scale, real-time model of potential cyber threats that agencies and critical sectors face. And that's it for this week. Thank you for watching this edition of the Weekly Video Report. See you at the same time, same place next week, and for further information, click the link below.